Hey everybody, how's it going? Milby here, and I'm gonna do something a little bit different. Something I've been kind of wanting to do for quite a while, but I'm actually gonna sit down and do it now. I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about shows that I like to watch, and I'm gonna do different videos about all the different ones I like to watch. And I'm gonna kind of talk about them, spoiler free at the start, and then we'll probably go into some spoilers afterwards. So that's the general gist. I don't know what I'm gonna call it. I might have a name for it later on, or I might not. Mostly I've been inspired to do this because I want to talk to people about the Resident Evil show on Netflix that just came out and why I think you should watch it. So I'll let you know when we're going into spoilers. Yeah. So until then, I liked it. So start off, I liked it. I enjoyed it a lot. I started watching it on a whim, and by the end, I was hooked. I think at the very, very start, I was like, I don't know. This feels more like I'm watching a generic zombie film. And then it just kind of kept pulling me in with its shifting narrative between 2022 and 2030 something. There's stuff when the world is normal, stuff when the world is kind of falling apart. That's the general gist. And it just kind of jumps between those two throughout the series, basically. And it's fantastic. It's definitely it's got its bits. It's not amazing throughout the whole way, but as a general piece of Resident Evil media, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I would highly recommend it to anybody. It's Lance Reddick as Wesker is fantastic. New characters they added are fine. They're fine. They make sense in the long run. You're kind of sitting there going why are you making up new characters when there's all these other characters? Again, these are all things that if you keep watching, they'll all make sense. But right at the start, you're like, what is happening here? I think it's about halfway through when things start to really reveal what's going on and what this is, what this show is. And that's when things get really, really interesting. I mean, they're already interesting before that. I was already pulled in. But then once I realized what the show actually was, I was like, oh my God, okay. So yeah, this is not a recreation of the games. This is not a retelling of the games. This is something very different. This is its own story, but it does not ignore the games. It builds upon the games inside of the Resident Evil world. And it's very good for it. It is a story inside of the world of Resident Evil that the games have created. And it's all the better for it, if I'm honest with you. It's got its cheesy hammy bits, very cheesy Resident Evil bits, but it's good. It's just really good. I would just highly recommend checking it out, and I really hope they make a second season. So I think I kind of want to talk about the show now. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it, and then come back and then listen to me go on about the show. So, spoilers incoming. This show, it starts off and you are like, okay, Wesker's in it. What the hell? And he's got children. What is going on? This is based in 2022. This is the original Resident Evil and stuff was based in the 90s or something like that. I think it was when the mansion incident's supposed to happen. I want to say in Raccoon City. So this is based in a town called New Raccoon City, and at first I was like, what is all this? Later on, you find out that this is a new Raccoon City because the old Raccoon City got destroyed. Because guess what? This is a sequel. The show is a sequel to the games. It blew my mind when I saw it. I thought this was like a retelling of Resident Evil with just using the characters. It's not. It is a sequel that follows on from the games. I don't think it. I can't remember if it referenced 7 and 8, but it definitely references 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. No, it pulls on that. So yeah, you spend a lot of the show kind of confused about like, okay, why is Wesker alive? Why is Wesker here? Why is Wesker here? What is going on? This is very confusing to me. And it jumps back and forth between the past and the present. You kind of see Wesker and his kids, and this is a very different Wesker. This is a Wesker who's got that he's got that sinister vibe to him, but he's a very doting, loving father who lets his kids kind of walk all over him, basically. And it's quite weird at first. You're like, this is not the Wesker I am used to. And it shows him and his kids in New Raccoon City, and he's working for Umbrella, and he's working on something called Joy, which is based on the T virus that they originally had back in Raccoon City. And there's like a new head of Umbrella here and stuff like that. And you're finding out about that and the kids. And the kids are like, what's going on in Umbrella? And they live in this like Umbrella town of all other children and families. And they go to like the Umbrella school. It's all very weird. And they've got all like the internet blocked, so you can't find out information about Umbrella and stuff like that. And as it goes on, the kids end up breaking into Umbrella, and I can't remember why. I think it's because the daughter like wants to save one of the animals. She thinks they're doing animal testing. She wants to save them. And they are doing animal testing, but they're doing animal testing and creating crazy Resident Evil monsters, like the dogs, which do feature in this, which is always great. You can't have a Resident Evil show without the dogs. Dogs are a key part of Resident Evil. So they break into the lab, and they end up getting like attacked by a dog. One of them does and gets bitten by the dog and mauled a bit. So she contracts the T virus. And then there's this big thing where, she's kind of slowly... But she keeps it quiet, and Wesker finds out and finds them there, covers up and stuff like that, keeps it quiet, doesn't want anyone to know that his daughter was caught the T-virus because they'll exterminate her, because this is what happened originally in Raccoon City when things fell apart. And but of course, until this point, they make vague references to something about Raccoon City and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, they are mentioning Raccoon City, okay. Because at the time, you're like watching it, and you're like, oh, they're mentioning Raccoon City as something that happened in the past. But is this because, at the time I was like, is this based after the games? Or is this just drawing on that lore and creating its own thing? And, I mean, it's a little bit of both, I suppose. So there's like these questions you're kind of asking throughout the whole thing. And she gets mauled, and then she's kind of like, there's that like, oh my god, she's kind of turning and stuff like that. She's feeling this anger and rage and all these bits and bobs. And as it goes on, I think, well, that's gonna be confusing if I say that. So they're like, Wesker's trying to like keep it under wraps whilst trying to come up with a cure, and eventually there's an episode, I think it's episode 4, where this researcher finds this research paper, and it is about Resident Evil 2. It's the plot of Resident Evil 2 3, where the virus goes out of control in the city. They have to nuke the city and destroy it, and it's covered up. And I was like, oh my god, hang on, what? And then I can't remember if it's episode 4 or 5, where you kind of get the big reveal where you're like, which is about how Wesker is alive. And it's because the original Wesker, cloned himself. He created 3 clones who weren't quite him. They were kind of like imperfect clones. And he kind of kept them in the Arklay Mountains, which is where Resident Evil 1 takes place, I think. And he kind of keeps them in this like secret area, basically. This like sort of basement area hidden. I think he's used Umbrella's like resources to do this on his own, basically. So he's got like one clone who's like quite happy and go free, go lucky and stuff. They're all very skilled. They kind of have Wesker's skills, but they don't have like Wesker's just horrible personality, basically. So yeah, it has this amazing scene where you see 3 Weskers and they're in this basement, and then down the stairs, boots come down. The original Wesker's there, and it's Lance Reddick with this like buzz cut. It's so funny. He's in the full Resident Evil 5 like Matrix leather coat stuff. It's the most cheesy, hammy stuff. I absolutely adored it. He plays it like so over the top. This like super aggressive Wesker who comes in and like he's like threatening to chop off people's fingers. He ends up shooting one of his clones in the head when they find him. He does some of like the super fast Wesker speedy attack stuff from Resident Evil 5, you know, when he does the weird Matrix stuff that they tried to recreate in the films, but they kind of failed to do that, you know. I failed that miserably. I'm not a big fan of the films. I should have talked about this at the start, but like I'm not a fan of the Resident Evil films. The you know, the big films. I haven't actually watched Welcome to Raccoon City, but I've heard it is a bit of a mess. So I think this is by far the best live action Resident Evil, definitely. Yeah, the films I don't love. I think they're just schlock, not great schlock. But anyway, this does the Resident Evil. It does a little bit of that weird speedy fight thing, and it's not great. I'm not gonna lie, it's not great. The budget for the show is actually pretty decent. The CGI is good, like it's actually pretty decent. But I just don't think it's possible to make that weird Wesker Matrix fighting style look good in real action. Even though they kind of did in the Matrix, I don't know. It's every time they try and do it in live action, it just looks hokey and weird. So they kind of do it. He kind of comes in, he's got the shades on, he plays the thingy, and then disappears. And that's the only time you see like the original Wesker in the show. But that moment is great. There's a great moment where one of the clones later on is talking to her daughters, to the daughters of one of the clones. So the clones get captured by Umbrella. One of them gets locked up in like a basement Umbrella, to do like research. The other one is given freedom to live his life and still work for Umbrella, but he's kind of allowed to live freely. And I think she said it was kind of like an experiment. They were curious about how a clone could adapt to the real world, basically, because these clones they said that Wesker's such an impatient man that he aged up the clones from like about 20 years in the span of like 6 months or something like that. So they have kind of like rapid aging in them, and it makes them very unstable. So they're all kind of falling apart slowly, which leads into Wesker's clones' kids, who are they basically, I think they were like grown. They're twins, but they were like, I think they used artificial insemination, I believe, to create the kids, and he genetically altered them to be stronger and better than regular humans, basically. And what he kind of does is he uses their blood as a way to keep him alive, which is a bit messed up. And they kind of hate him when they find out. They're like, what are we, like your blood bags? They kind of keep his genetics from falling apart, essentially. And there's a great line where one of the clones is talking to them, and there's the regular clone, and then there's the other clone who's kind of like he hasn't really spent any time in the real world, and he's quite unaware of how the world works. He's got like a really sweet innocence to him, but he can also snap at the drop of a hat and go into like kick-ass fighting mode, basically. And he drops this amazing line that I was just like, that's when I realized that this is a show made by fans of Resident Evil. This is a show made by fans for fans. Like, if you're a fan of Resident Evil, I think you will like this show, because I feel like this was made by fans for that purpose. And there's a great line where he sits down and he's like, so yeah, we're like clones, and there was the original Wesker, and he was quite a bad dude, but don't worry, he died in a volcano. And I just burst out laughing. I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad to hear them just acknowledge how insane that is. He was like, don't worry, he died in a volcano. It's like a whole thing. And I was like, oh, it made me so happy to hear them say that, because it is insane. Like, yes, the original Wesker in Resident Evil 5 does die in a volcano. That whole scene is mad. It involves Chris like beating up a giant boulder, and yeah, Wesker gets killed in a volcano. So it was great. They fully acknowledge all of the story, and yeah, these are the reason these Weskers exist is because the real Wesker is dead, and these are the clones that got left behind, essentially. And I honestly loved it more when that happened. There's a great nod later on to Resident Evil 4. He's not a zombie, but he's just a dude who like cuts up zombies, and he's like it's the guy with a chainsaw with a sack on his head. He makes the same kind of noises, and when he gets killed, he does the exact same death animation from the game, which is amazing. Just like the knocking his knees, drop on his face. Absolutely fantastic. They did a really good nod to Resident Evil 4 with that. I appreciated it a lot. They had some setup with I think a creature. I don't know what creature it was supposed to be. This like long clawed creature. They kind of set that up as like a thing for a new season, so I kind of hope they get to do that. You get to see quite a few creatures throughout it. Lickers are in it. They're really well done. They're not in there for too long, but you got to have lickers at some point in there. They like exist in the tunnels. They exist in the Channel Tunnel because this is based the like New Raccoon City is based in South Africa, I think. But when we cut to the present, which, with the world's falling apart, we're in London. And then it kind of moves into, like, France afterwards. But yeah, there's, like, a big whole bit where they have to cross the Channel Tunnel on foot and in vehicles. And they end up running into lickers. They run into this giant spider thing. It's funny. It's like the show, when it's in the past, in 2022, is like this sort of family drama. And... teen drama in a way about like these two kids trying to adapt to this new place, going to school. This girl is like kind of sort of zombifying, but in the end it turns out she's not because of the genetic fiddling I think Wesker did with his kids. They at least one of them is immune to the virus. It seems like it affects her, but then she doesn't turn. So she's kind of got like powers, but not quite. I think like Nemesis, but she doesn't like mutate or anything like that. She's just quite strong and a bit loopy. She's a little bit loopy. The head of Umbrella is fantastic in it. She's just this like cold-hearted, just ice queen who. Well, actually, no. I say that she plays it like she's cold-hearted, but she has a son who she clearly really loves, and she's trying to like. Run a company and be a mum, and she's kind of not really succeeding on the mum part because she's putting a lot of time into the company, and she's also trying to be like a wife to her wife, and yeah, it's good. It's honestly like really good. I really like her. She's really good. She's got like her mum side, which is almost like a sort of front for her, I guess, of her true side, which is kind of this cold business Umbrella running it and stuff. And it's typical Umbrella, They're like, oh, if you take too much of the joy medicine or joy drug, then you'll kind of be infected with the T virus. And they're like, that's not a problem. They'll have to take so many, don't worry about it. Put like a warning on the label. And it also turns out you can control people, I think, with it. So that was like a great thing for them. Yeah, it's just so good. It's just so good. There's like a giant spider in the Channel Tunnel, like a boss. There's like a big boss as well. Like towards the end of the show, this giant like mutant crocodile comes out of the sea, and that's like the big final boss in a way and stuff like that. It's very Resident Evil-y. Like I was saying, in the past is like the family drama and them all trying to fit in, and then the present and the world's ended is like a Resident Evil action show, where she's like running through each set piece and stuff like that, running from Umbrella, going through the zombies. Who can run in this? The zombies are quite different. They like run full pelt. So that was interesting. That was one of the first things I noticed when I was watching it. When it starts, I was like, man, those zombies are like running. I was like, that's unusual. It's very unusual. But yeah, and like obviously the T virus, when it infects creatures, it like makes them mutate crazily. So there's like a giant spider monster at one point, which is creepy but very cool. It's very gory as well. It doesn't hold back on the gore, not at all, which I appreciate. There is a point where a man gets grabbed by a spider with his claws and literally split in two. He just rips the person in two, and I was like, that's gross, but very good. And there's lots of bits like that. They don't hold back on the gore at all. Lots of exploding heads and all that. And very Resident Evil-y, so I appreciate that. There's got like the big boss crocodile, and they've like a big showdown on a beach. It kind of slows down a little bit when the main character Jade gets to her like this library, which is like this boat floating in the ocean off of France, where they like keep the old world alive and they kind of do experiments about the T virus and stuff. That bit's a little slow. Like I'm like, I don't really need to. I mean, it's kind of character building for her because she's got like a daughter and I don't know if he's a husband or a boyfriend. I'm not sure. But I mean, it's quite funny actually. Like everyone, she has this like kind of running group of people throughout the present, who just hang out with her for like a little bit and then die. They're like this rolling cast of side characters that just come in, like, hey, we're gonna help, and then dead. So like, like her husband goes off at some point. The random people she meets in the Channel Tunnel. Everyone just comes in and just dies basically. But yeah, she makes it this boat, and then there's like it kind of lulls a bit there. It gets a bit like I remember I was watching that. I was like, okay, this is dragging a little bit here and there, as you know, some of these shows do. They're like kind of like long films in a way, and you could trim the fat. But I also think that TV shows or a series, a long form series, is far far better for telling video game stories than a film, because video game stories are long form. And personally, I don't think we should really try and turn games into films because the story medium is too different. It just doesn't quite translate. But like, if you're gonna do it as a series, because films, they just flop. There aren't really any good video game movies. There's just okay ones. Mortal Kombat, the original, is an okay one. It's not like a good film, but it's a fun film, and like the bar for video game films is so goddamn low that it doesn't take much for it to be considered decent. Like the Sonic films, they're fine. They're not bad. They're fine. They're not aimed at me. They're very kiddie films. The jokes in them are terrible. The humor is goddamn awful, but they're fine. They're all right. They're all right. But I can't say that I've ever watched a film based on a game where I've been like, that is just a good film. That is straight up a good film. Like, a series, great. Like the Castlevania series on Netflix, love that. Absolutely amazing. This Resident Evil series, love it. Absolutely amazing. It's not perfect. It's got bits where it's not great, but like overall, it is a very solid. It's a solid entry into the Resident Evil world. It's a good sequel based after. Well, all of them, I guess. I don't know when 7 or 8 are based. I've not actually played 8. I don't know if they mention 7. They mention a lot of characters throughout the series, though, like in 2 and 3 and stuff, that I'm like, oh, I get very excited when they bring up those characters. I'm like, oh, Berkeley and stuff. And, yeah. Obviously, I'd love to see a good interpretation of the games, but then also, I guess I don't want to. I don't know. Like, if they could take the people who made this and then make like a long form series based in the mansion, I'd be into that. I want to see a second series because they leave a lot of stuff open. There's this whole story like at the end, her sister ends up kidnapping Jade's daughter. I can't remember the sister's name. Billy, I think it is. I think it's Billy. She just goes like straight up full crazy evil, basically. She ends up kidnapping Jade's daughter because I think she wants her for her genes and stuff like that, or her genetic code and stuff. And then she kind of leaves Jade alive, which I don't really understand why. I think it's because they're like sisters, and they're like, oh, I can't kill you. She doesn't really say that though. She just kind of leaves her. She shoots her and then just leaves her there. So she ends of her like taking Jade's daughter away, and you find out that this like creature. So they only show this creature like twice in the series. I don't know what it's supposed to be. I don't know if it could be from one of the other games, but I don't recognize it. They don't really talk about it, and then like the umbrella town gets blown up, and like they're all looking around for the place, and you see this creature's hand come out of the ground. So I'm guessing that's like involved in one of the reasons as to why you don't really see how the world ended, which I'm assuming they're going to be doing in another season. They'll be jumping between the two. You see, like, you kind of see leading up to the bit where how it could happen, like the whole umbrella things get blown up. One of the father of the two twins sacrificed himself to help them escape, but one of the other clones gets out. Albie, I think they call him Albie. He's like the sort of the clone who's like not really used to the world and stuff like that. He gets away with and helps the daughters escape. So yeah, like Albert Wesker blows up the thing, sacrificing himself, and then yeah, they like looking for the rubble, and you see this creature's hand come out, and then that's kind of like the end of that. You don't really get to see what happened, but I guess you can imply that kind of leads to everything falling apart. Yeah, and they leave it open for Jade to chase after her daughter in the future, and this creature to do stuff in the past, I guess, basically. But yeah, no, overall, I enjoyed it. The characters for Jade and Billy are good, both as young Jade. They have completely different actresses for young Wesker's kids and older Wesker's kids. At least I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah, they definitely do. And they're both really good. The older Billy, I swear her name is Billy. I gotta like Wesker kid. I gotta double check her name is Billy. Yeah, Billy Wesker. Yeah, her older version's a bit like cheesy hammy villainy, like, oh, I'm an evil villain. Kid her is fine. She's kind of like an awkward teen. Kid Jade is pretty damn good as well. Adult Jade is really good. Yeah, no, I think everyone does good acting overall. Like the best, Lance Reddick steals every scene he's in. He's just so good. And it's really great because he gets to play like multiple different versions of Wesker, and he's really good at jumping between the characters and stuff like that. Like he plays evil original Wesker, like evil original Wesker is. You know, he's this like cheesy hammy villain who's like, I'm badass and do matrix moves and wear leather coats. Ugh. You know, and he plays the Albert Wesker, the clone with the daughters. He plays him as like this kind of like guy who's got like a sinister side to him, but he's just a loving father. And you've got Albie, who is like this kind of not quite right, and he's a bit unhinged, but he cares deeply about his, I guess technically, what would they be to him? Not granddaughters, nephews, not something like that. I don't know. He cares about them a lot, though. He wouldn't like he protects them all the time. He's always like, hey, everything's good, don't worry about it. He's just kind of flicking into anger and stuff like that. And the other clone you don't really see too much of. He just kind of gets shot in the past. But yeah, there's moments when you kind of click and realize that this is actually a sequel. Are amazing. Like that was when I was like, oh my god, I think I love this show. All the problems I had and all the confusion, I was like, this doesn't really feel like Resident Evil. Like it doesn't make any sense in terms of the games. Like what the hell? How is this related to the games? And then suddenly I'm like, oh. Well, now it makes sense about how everything's related to the games. I get it now. Okay. It's just, yeah. I think it does a really good job of not ignoring the lore, building off of the lore, and creating something really unique and interesting. And I think most Resident Evil fans will enjoy it. And I hope they give it a shout. I think a lot of people will put off originally like, what the hell is this? Just watch it. Watch it and keep watching it. And you will enjoy it. I can't promise you that, but I definitely did. I was not sold at the start. By the end, I was like, this is the best interpretation of Resident Evil they've ever done. Even if it's not an interpretation. Even if this is the best Resident Evil live action show they've done. The only show. The best Resident Evil live action media they've done. There we go. It's not the movies, It's not the schlocky, ridiculous movies. It's not the B movie-esque style I've heard from Welcome to Raccoon City. Even though I have heard they're actually quite, they do quite stick to like, I've heard they can be quite loyal to like some of the scenes, like they create some scenes quite well. But I don't know, it feels like the closer you get to recreating the exact scenes from the video games, the more like schlocky and stupid they get. I'm sure we'll see many more video game movies, but maybe just don't, you know? Just don't. Just don't. If you're going to do it animated like Castlevania, or do a long form series. Ideally animated. I think it works better. It's easier to suspend disbelief for the craziness that happens with games if it's animated. Like, I would love, and I mean I would love to see an animated Kingdom Hearts series. I would love it. I think it would be great. I want that. Please give me that. If you're going to make any game into a series, give me an animated Kingdom Hearts series. It'd be fantastic. Anyway, I think that is everything I wanted to talk about. This has been my little video, essay, just like a video rant about Resident Evil. Next time, I'm going to like take notes so I remember about what I want to say, because this was quite waffling and all over the place. So in the future, I'm going to like... I know this is kind of how I do my thing, is I don't really write a script. I just kind of just start talking and let my brain go and just jump between things. And it leads to a bit of a disjointed thing. But yeah, I might give myself a bit more of like, not a script so much as just, I mean, you could script something out. But it's just, you know, some notes that I can follow and keep track of my thoughts and things I want to hit when it comes to shows I want to talk about, because I like watching shows. And, you know, I want to talk about them. So, yeah, that's it. That's all I got to say for Resident Evil. Check it out. Go watch it. I would recommend it. I hope they make more. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.